Clara pressed her youngest son's face into her coat so he wouldn't see her cry. 17 cents. That's all she had left. The telegram in her pocket said her groom was dead. The boarding house door had just slammed in her face. And now her 3 children stood in the falling snow hungry, freezing, watching her with eyes that still believed she could save them. She couldn't. "Mama," her eldest daughter whispered, "where do we go now?" Clara had no answer. She had nothing left to give. If you want to know how this mother and her children survived that Christmas Eve, subscribe to my channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The train doors opened and Clara May Hollister stepped down into nothing. Not nothing exactly. There was a platform. There was snow. There was a wooden sign that read, "Silver Creek, Colorado Territory," in faded letters. But the man who was supposed to meet her wasn't there. The life she'd been promised wasn't there. The future her children were counting on wasn't there. Will tugged at her coat. "Mama, I'm cold." "I know, baby." Eliza stood rigid beside her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the platform like a soldier. At 12 years old, she'd already learned to look for danger before looking for comfort. "He ain't here," Eliza said flatly. "The man, he ain't coming." "Don't say ain't. You say it." "I'm tired." Lily pressed closer to Clara's side, clutching her rag doll with fingers that had turned pink from the cold. "Mama, my tummy hurts." Clara closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. She let herself feel the weight of it. The exhaustion, the fear, the terrible knowing that she had brought her children 1,000 miles to meet a man who might not exist. Then she opened her eyes and straightened her spine. "Stay close," she said. "All of you. We're going to find the telegraph office." They walked through the small town, 4 figures huddled against the wind. Clara kept her head up even as the cold bit through her thin shawl. People passed them on the wooden sidewalks. A woman in a fur-trimmed coat glanced at them, then looked away. A man tipped his hat, but didn't slow down. No one stopped. No one asked if they needed help. Clara found the telegraph office at the end of the main street. The sign said, "Closed for Christmas Eve," but there was light inside. She knocked. Nothing. She knocked again, harder. The door cracked open. A thin man with spectacles peered out. "We're closed, ma'am." "Please, I need to send a message. Or receive one. I was supposed to meet someone here. Samuel Briggs. He was supposed to—" The man's face changed. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Or worse, pity. "You're the bride," he said. Clara's stomach dropped. "You know about me." "Whole town knows, ma'am." He looked at the children, then back at her. "You'd best come inside." The office was small and warm. Will immediately pressed himself against the iron stove, and Clara didn't have the heart to pull him away. Lily sat on a wooden chair, legs dangling, still clutching her doll. Eliza stood by the door like she was ready to run. The telegraph operator, his name was Mr. Henley, he said, shuffled through papers on his desk. "Message came 3 days ago," he said, "from Samuel's sister. I've been holding it hoping you wouldn't show up." "What do you mean?" He handed her a folded paper. Clara read it once, then again. The words didn't change. Samuel Briggs deceased. Fever took him December 15th. Deepest regrets for any inconvenience. Inconvenience. Her legs gave out. She caught herself on the edge of the desk, but barely. "Mama." Lily's voice was small. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. She was 1,000 miles from Boston, with 3 children, 17 cents, and a dead man's promise that had turned to ash. Eliza crossed the room and took the paper from her mother's hand. She read it silently, face expressionless. "So he's dead," Eliza said. "Yes. And we got no place to go." "Eliza, And no money. We'll figure something out. How? Eliza's voice cracked. How, Mama, you sold everything. The furniture, Pa's watch, everything, for a man who was already dead. I didn't know. You didn't know nothing. You just wanted to run away, and now we got nothing. The words hit Clara like a slap, because they were true. She had run. From Boston. From her husband's family. From the whispers and the shame, and the way they looked at her like she was something they'd stepped in. She had run, and she had brought her children with her, and now they were all going to freeze to death on Christmas Eve, because she'd been fool enough to believe a stranger's letters. Mr. Henley cleared his throat. There's a boarding house on Main Street. Mrs. Porter runs it. She might have a room. Clara nodded. She couldn't speak. They walked to the boarding house in silence. Eliza didn't look at her. Lily held her hand so tight it hurt. Will asked twice if they were almost there. The boarding house was a tall wooden building with a painted sign, Porter's Boarding House, rooms available. Clara knocked. A woman opened the door. Middle-aged, hard-faced arms crossed over her chest. Help you? I need a room, for me and my children, just for tonight. The woman looked past Clara at the three children. Something in her expression softened for half a second, then hardened again. It's $4 a week, payment in advance. Clara swallowed. I don't have $4, but I can work. I can clean, cook, anything you need. Just for tonight, please. It's Christmas Eve, and my children. I ain't running a charity, ma'am. Please. Just one night. I'll pay you back. I swear I'll... You're the Briggs bride, ain't you? Clara went still. Whole town's been talking about it, Mrs. Porter continued. Mail-order bride shows up, and her groom's already dead. Some folks are saying you knew. That you came for his land, not his hand. That's not true. Don't matter what's true. Matters what people say. Mrs. Porter began to close the door. I can't have that kind of trouble under my roof. Not at Christmas. My children haven't eaten since yesterday. The door closed. Clara stood there frozen, staring at the painted wood. Behind her, Lily started to cry. Quiet little sobs she was trying to hide. Shh, baby. Clara pulled her close. Shh, it's okay. We're okay. I'm hungry, Mama. I know. And cold. I know, sweetheart. I know. Eliza said nothing. She just stood there, 12 years old, looking at her mother with eyes that had lost something. Something Clara would never get back. They walked. Clara didn't know where they were going. She just knew they couldn't stand still. Standing still meant giving up. Standing still meant her children would see her cry. The main street was nearly empty now. Most folks had gone home to their families, their warm houses, their Christmas dinners. Candles glowed in windows. Somewhere someone was playing a piano. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing Clara had ever heard. Mama, look. Will was pointing at a restaurant across the street. The Iron Pot, the sign said. Through the frosted window, Clara could see a man sitting alone at a table eating. The smell hit her then. Meat. Bread, butter. Her stomach cramped so hard she bent over. Mama! Eliza grabbed her arm. Mama, what's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. Just give me a moment. But Lily had already crossed the street. She was standing at the window, small face pressed to the glass, watching the man eat. Lily, get back here. Clara hurried after her, pulling Will along. She grabbed Lily's shoulder and turned her away from the window. You can't do that, baby. You can't just... The door opened. The man from inside stood there. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair tucked behind his ears. His clothes were dusty but clean, the kind of worn that came from work, not neglect. He looked at Lily, then at Will, then at Eliza, then at Clara. You folks need something. Clara's face burned with shame. No, I'm sorry. My daughter, She's hungry, the man said. Not a question. We're fine. Ma'am? His voice was low, steady. "I asked if you need something." Clara's throat tightened. She tried to speak and couldn't. Everything she'd been holding in, the fear, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that had died on the train platform, it was all pressing against her chest, threatening to break her open. Eliza stepped forward. "Our mama's too proud to say it, mister, but we ain't eaten since yesterday morning, and we got nowhere to sleep tonight, and the man she came to marry is dead. So yeah, we need something. We need a whole lot of something." Eliza. But the man just nodded, slow and calm, like Eliza hadn't just stripped her mother's dignity bare in front of a stranger. "Name's Caleb," he said. "Caleb Stoneridge." "I'm Eliza. This is Lily. That's Will, and that's our Mama Clara." "Pleased to meet you, Eliza." He looked at Clara. "Ma'am, there's food inside. More than I can eat. Kitchen made too much like always. You and your children are welcome to it." Clara shook her head. "I can't pay." "Didn't ask if you could." "I can't accept charity." "It ain't charity." He stepped aside, holding the door open. "It's supper, and it's Christmas Eve, and your children are hungry." Lily tugged Clara's sleeve. "Please, Mama." Will was already walking toward the door. Clara looked at Caleb Stoneridge. He didn't look away, didn't pity her, didn't judge her. He just waited, patient as a mountain. "Why?" she asked. "You don't know us." "No, ma'am, I don't." He tilted his head slightly. "But I know what it looks like when someone's carrying more than they can hold. And I know what it's like to be hungry on Christmas." Something cracked in Clara's chest. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once and led them inside. The heat wrapped around Clara like arms she'd forgotten existed. Will ran straight to the stove and pressed his back against it. Lily stood frozen, overwhelmed by the warmth. A large black man emerged from the kitchen. He had kind eyes and hands the size of dinner plates. "Caleb," he said, "you bringing me more mouths to feed?" "Tom, this is Mrs. Hollister and her children. They need supper." Big Tom looked at Clara for a long moment, then at the children, then he smiled. "Well then, sit down all of you. I got stew that'll put meat on them bones." They sat. Clara tried to eat slowly to show some dignity, but her hands were shaking. The stew was thick with potatoes and carrots and chunks of beef that melted on her tongue. Lily ate like she was afraid someone would take it away. Will kept asking for more bread. Even Eliza, who had barely spoken, cleaned her bowl twice. Caleb sat at a separate table, giving them space. He drank his coffee and didn't stare. When they finished, Clara stood and walked to his table. "Mr. Stoneridge." "Caleb." "Caleb." She took a breath. "I don't know how to thank you." "Then don't. I will repay you, when I can. I don't know when that will be, but—" "Ma'am." He looked up at her and his eyes were steady, brown and warm and steady. "There ain't nothing to repay. A full plate doesn't mean much if you eat it alone." Clara blinked. She thought of Thomas, her husband, the way he used to save her the last piece of pie, the way he'd hold her hand under the dinner table while her in-laws criticized everything she cooked. She hadn't thought about him in weeks, hadn't let herself. "Thank you," she said again. It was all she had. Caleb nodded. Then he asked the question that changed everything. "You got somewhere to sleep tonight?" Clara's silence was answer enough. He stood, put on his hat, and dropped coins on the table for Big Tom. "Come on," he said. "Where? I know someone who might help." They walked through the snow together. Clara in front with Will on her hip. Eliza beside her, suspicious but quiet. Lily holding Caleb's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Where are you taking us?" Clara asked. "There's a woman named Leona Nighthawk. She lives on the edge of town, takes in folks who need a place, doesn't ask too many questions." "And you think she'll take us?" "I think she's got a warm fire and a good heart." He paused. "And I think you've earned a roof over your head tonight." Clara looked at him. "You don't know anything about me." I know you're a mother who'd rather starve than let her children see her beg." He looked straight ahead. "That tells me enough." They reached a small house at the end of a narrow lane. 2 stories, yellow siding faded by sun. A bright red door with a wreath of dried sage. Caleb knocked. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s. Dark hair streaked with gray. Sharp eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "Caleb Stoneridge," she said. "Bit late for a social call." "This is Clara Hollister and her children. They got no place to stay." Leona's eyes moved to Clara, then to each of the children. She lingered on Will, who had fallen asleep against Clara's shoulder. "You the Briggs bride?" Clara's jaw tightened. "I was supposed to be. And now you ain't. Now I ain't." Leona studied her for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. "Kitchen's through there. Fire's dying, but there's wood by the stove. You look like you could use some tea." Clara hesitated on the threshold. "I can work. I can pay you back. I'm not looking for child." Leona's voice was firm, but not unkind. "It's Christmas Eve. Your babies are half frozen and dead on their feet. We can talk about work tomorrow. Tonight you rest." Clara felt something break open inside her. Not the bad kind of breaking, the kind that lets light in. "Thank you," she whispered. Leona nodded and looked at Caleb. "You staying?" "Just long enough to see them settled." Clara turned to him. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe us anything." Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Someone helped me once, when I was broken and had nothing. She didn't ask why, just gave me a place to catch my breath." He looked at the children already stumbling toward the warmth inside. "Figure the least I can do is pass that on." He tipped his hat. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Hollister." "Merry Christmas, Mr. Stoneridge." He walked away into the snow. Clara watched him go until she couldn't see him anymore. Then she stepped inside, closed the door, and let herself breathe for the first time in days. Leona was already heating water on the stove. She handed Clara a blanket without a word. "Your boy can have the room upstairs," Leona said. "There's a cot for the girls. You'll take the bed by the fire." "I can't take your bed." "Wasn't asking." Clara wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. It smelled like wood smoke and sage. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. "You don't know me. Everyone in this town thinks I'm some kind of... I don't know what they think I am." Leona poured 2 cups of tea and sat down across from her. "I know exactly what they think you are," she said, "and I know what it's like to be on the wrong side of this town's whispers." She pushed a cup toward Clara. "But I also know what a mother looks like when she's running out of road. And I know your children didn't do nothing wrong." Clara's eyes burned. "I sold everything," she said. "My husband's watch, the furniture, everything we had, for a man I'd never met, because he wrote pretty letters and promised us a home. And now I've got 17 cents and 3 children who trust me to keep them alive." Leona sipped her tea. "That's more than some folks start with." "It's not enough. It's enough for tonight." Leona set down her cup. "Tomorrow we figure out the rest. But tonight you're safe. Your children are warm, and that rancher who brought you here? He doesn't do that for just anyone." Clara looked toward the door. "He seems kind." "He's more than kind. He's good. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" Leona smiled just slightly. "Kind is what people do when others are watching. Good is what they do when no one's looking." That night, Clara lay in the borrowed bed by the dying fire listening to her children breathe. Will was sprawled across the cot upstairs, mouth open, finally warm. Lily clutched her rag doll even in sleep. Eliza lay rigid, pretending to rest, but Clara could see the tension in her shoulders. Her oldest daughter hadn't forgiven her. Maybe never would. But they were alive. They were warm. They had food in their bellies and a roof over their heads. For now, that was enough. Clara closed her eyes and thought about Caleb Stoneridge. The way he'd looked at her children. The way he hadn't asked for anything. The way he'd said those words like they were simple truth. A full plate doesn't mean much if you eat it alone. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if this town would accept her or destroy her. She didn't know if she'd ever be able to give her children the life she'd promised. But for the first time in months, Clara May Hollister fell asleep without crying. And somewhere outside, the snow kept falling. Soft and silent and white, covering the world in something that almost looked like forgiveness. Clara woke to the smell of bacon and the sound of her son laughing. She sat up so fast her head spun. Will's laughter. She hadn't heard that sound in weeks. Not since Boston. Not since the night she'd told him they were leaving everything behind. She stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's dress, and followed the sound to the kitchen. Will sat at a wooden table, a fork in one hand and a piece of bacon in the other. Across from him sat a boy, about 14, dark-haired and quiet, watching Will with something like amusement. "Mama." Will's face lit up. "This is Joseph. He's Leona's son. He showed me a real arrowhead." Clara's heart clenched. "Will, don't talk with your mouth full." "But Mama, it's a real one, from a real Indian." The boy Joseph smiled slightly. "My grandfather made it. Long time ago." Leona appeared from somewhere behind Clara, carrying a plate of eggs. "Sit down, Mrs. Hollister. You look like you haven't slept proper in a month." "Where are my girls?" "Eliza's out back helping with the chickens. Wouldn't take no for an answer. That one's got steel in her spine." Leona set the plate down. "Lily's still sleeping. Figured she needed it." Clara sank into a chair. Her legs felt weak. "I should help. I shouldn't just sit here while—" "You should eat." Leona's voice was firm. "Can't help nobody if you collapse." Clara ate. The eggs were thick with butter and salt. The bacon was crisp. The coffee was strong enough to wake the dead. She was halfway through her plate when the back door opened and Eliza walked in. Her daughter's face was flushed from the cold, her hair tangled, her dress spotted with mud. But her eyes were clearer than they'd been in days. "The brown hen's got a bad leg," Eliza announced. "I wrapped it with some cloth. She should be okay." Leona raised an eyebrow. "You know about chickens." "We had some, back in Boston, before Pa died." A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Clara set down her fork. "Eliza, I'm hungry." Eliza sat down next to Will and reached for the bacon. "Is there more?" They ate in silence after that. Joseph excused himself to chop wood. Will asked if he could help and ran after him before Clara could say no. When the table was cleared, Leona poured more coffee and sat across from Clara. "You got a plan?" Clara shook her head. "I had a plan. It died with Samuel Briggs." "What do you know about him, the man you were supposed to marry?" "Only what he wrote in his letters." Clara wrapped her hands around her cup. "He said he had a ranch, said he was lonely, said he wanted a family." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I believed him." "Why wouldn't you? Man writes letters promising a home, you believe him. That ain't foolish. That's human." "My daughter thinks it's foolish." Leona glanced at Eliza, who was pretending not to listen from across the room. "Your daughter's scared. Scared looks a lot like angry when you're 12. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. A knock at the door made them both turn. Leona stood. "That'll be Sister Catherine. She always comes by Christmas morning with bread." But it wasn't Sister Catherine. Clara knew before the door fully opened. She knew by the way Leona's shoulders tensed. She knew by the sudden silence that fell over the house. A woman stood on the porch. Younger than Clara, maybe 25. Pretty in a pale, exhausted way. She wore black from head to toe, and her eyes were red from crying. "I'm looking for Clara Hollister," she said. "The woman who was supposed to marry my brother." Clara stood slowly. "I'm Clara." The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. "My name is Margaret Briggs. Samuel was my brother. And I think you deserve to know the truth about how he died." They sat at the kitchen table. Leona made more coffee. Eliza pressed herself against the wall, watching, listening. Margaret's hands trembled as she spoke. Samuel was a good man, not perfect but good. He wanted a family more than anything. After our parents died, he was alone on that ranch for 3 years. Just him and the cattle, and the silence. Clara said nothing. She just listened. He wrote to you because he was lonely. Not because he wanted a housekeeper or a nursemaid. He wanted someone to share his life with. Margaret's voice cracked. He talked about you all the time, about your letters, about how brave you were raising 3 children alone, about how he couldn't wait to meet them. Clara's throat tightened. What happened to him? Fever. Margaret wiped her eyes. It came on fast. 3 days, that's all it took. He was delirious at the end, calling out for people who weren't there. Calling out for you, Mrs. Hollister, a woman he'd never even met. Eliza made a small sound. Clara didn't look at her. The telegram, Clara said. It was so cold, just a few words. I know. Margaret's face twisted with guilt. I wrote it. I was angry. Not at you, but at God. At the world. At the fact that my brother died alone on Christmas morning 3 days before the woman he loved was supposed to arrive. She pressed her hands flat on the table. I'm sorry, I should have written more. I should have explained. You were grieving. So were you. Margaret reached into her coat again and pulled out a second envelope. Samuel left this. He wrote it the night before he got sick. I think he meant to give it to you when you arrived. Clara took the envelope with shaking hands. I'll leave you to read it, Margaret said, standing. I needed you to know. He was good. He would have been good to you and your children. Thank you. Margaret nodded. She looked at Eliza, then at Clara. There's something else. Samuel owned his ranch outright. No debts, no liens. His will? She hesitated. His will names his future wife as sole heir. Clara went still. What? He wrote it 6 months ago, right after he sent for you. He wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of. You and your children. Margaret's eyes were wet. The ranch is yours, Mrs. Hollister, if you want it. The silence that followed was so thick, Clara could hear her own heartbeat. I don't understand. Neither did I at first, but that was Samuel. He gave everything he had, even to people he'd never met. Margaret buttoned her coat. I'll be at the boarding house for 2 more days. After that, I'm going back east. If you have questions, come find me. She left without another word. Clara sat frozen, the unopened letter clutched in her hands. Mama. Eliza's voice was small. What does that mean? About the ranch. Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. She was staring at the envelope like it might catch fire. Open it, Leona said quietly. Whatever's in there, it won't change by waiting. Clara broke the seal. The letter was 2 pages long, written in a careful, sloping hand. She read it once in silence, then again aloud so Eliza could hear. Dear Clara, by the time you read this, you'll be here. You'll be standing in my kitchen, or maybe on my porch, looking at the mountains and wondering what kind of fool promises a home to a stranger. I am that fool, and I'm not sorry. I've spent 3 years alone on this ranch. 3 years eating supper by myself, talking to cattle because there's no one else to talk to, watching the sun go down, and knowing I'll watch it go down again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until I die. I don't want to die alone, Clara, and I don't want you to be alone either. I know you're scared. I know you've got 3 children depending on you, and 17 cents to your name, and no reason to trust a man you've never met. But I'm asking you to trust me anyway. Not because I've earned it, but because I want to. I want to earn it. I want to sit across from you at breakfast and hear about your day. I want to teach your boy how to ride a horse and your girls how to shoot a rifle. I want to build a life with you, Clara, a real one, the kind that lasts. I know this might be the ramblings of a lonely man, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Welcome home. Yours, Samuel Briggs. Clara's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. Eliza crossed the room and sat beside her mother. She didn't say anything. She just sat there close enough that their shoulders touched. "He sounds nice," Lily said from the doorway. Clara looked up. Her youngest daughter stood there in a borrowed nightgown, ragdoll clutched to her chest, watching with solemn eyes. "He does, doesn't he?" Clara whispered. "I wish we could have met him." "Me too, baby. Me too." They sat together for a long time. The fire crackled. The coffee grew cold. Outside, the snow had stopped falling, and thin winter sunlight streamed through the frosted windows. Finally, Leona spoke. "So, you've got a ranch." Clara laughed. It came out broken and wet. "I've got a dead man's ranch that I don't know how to run." "You'll learn." "I don't know anything about cattle, or horses, or... You know how to work. You know how to survive. The rest is just details." Leona stood and began clearing the table. "Besides, you've got help, whether you want it or not." Clara looked at her. "Why? Why are you being so kind to us?" "You don't know me." "I know enough." Leona stacked the plates without looking at her. "I know what it's like to be a widow in a town that doesn't want you. I know what it's like to have a child depending on you and no money in your pocket. And I know what it's like when someone offers you a hand and you're too proud to take it." She turned around. "Don't be too proud, Mrs. Hollister. Pride is a luxury you can't afford right now." Clara opened her mouth to argue, then she closed it. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." The rest of Christmas Day passed in a blur. Clara helped Leona with the cooking. Eliza played cards with Joseph. Will ran around the yard until he collapsed in exhaustion. Lily sat by the fire, reading a worn book of fairy tales that Leona had given her. For a few hours, Clara let herself forget. She forgot about the boarding house door slamming in her face. She forgot about Mrs. Porter's cold eyes and colder words. She forgot about the whispers that had followed her through town, the suspicious looks, the way people crossed the street when they saw her coming. She forgot, and she let herself be happy. It couldn't last. Late afternoon, another knock came at the door. This time it was Caleb. He stood on the porch with his hat in his hands and a burlap sack over his shoulder. Snow dusted his dark hair and clung to the collar of his coat. "Mr. Stoneridge," Clara said, surprised. "Ma'am?" He nodded. "I hope I'm not intruding." "No, Please come in." He stepped inside and immediately Will came running. "Mr. Cowboy." Caleb's eyebrows rose. "Mr. what?" "That's what I call you. 'Cause you're a cowboy, right? With the horses and the cows and everything." "I suppose I am." "Do you have a gun?" "Will?" Clara grabbed her son's arm. "That's not a polite question." "It's all right, ma'am." Caleb crouched down to Will's level. "I do have a gun, but I only use it to protect my cattle from wolves. A gun's a tool, not a toy. You understand?" Will nodded solemnly. "Can I see it?" "Maybe someday. When you're older." Caleb straightened and looked at Clara. "I brought something, for the children, if that's all right." Clara hesitated. "You've already done so much. It's Christmas." He said it simply like that explained everything. He reached into the burlap sack and pulled out 3 objects. For Will, a wooden horse carved by hand with a real horsehair tail. For Lily, a small wooden doll with a painted face and a dress made from scraps of calico. For Eliza, a leather-bound journal with blank pages and a pencil tucked inside. Will grabbed the horse and immediately started making galloping sounds. Lily clutched the doll to her chest and stared at Caleb with wide eyes. But Eliza didn't move. She looked at the journal, then at Caleb, her expression unreadable. "Why?" she asked. Why what? Why are you giving us things you don't know us? You don't owe us nothing. Eliza, Clara started. No, Mama. I want to know. Eliza's jaw was set, her eyes hard. People don't just do nice things for strangers. There's always something they want. Caleb didn't flinch. He didn't get angry. He just looked at Eliza with steady eyes and said, You're right. People usually do want something. So what do you want? Right now, I want you to have a good Christmas, that's all. That ain't all. Nobody does something for nothing. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled a chair from the table and sat down, putting himself at Eliza's eye level. You want to know the truth? Yes. I had a wife once. Her name was Mary. She died 3 winters ago. Fever took her same as Samuel Briggs. He paused. We never had children. Wanted them, but it wasn't meant to be. And ever since she passed, I've been wondering what it was all for. The ranch, the work, all of it. He looked at the wooden horse in Will's hands. When I saw your family last night standing in the snow with nothing, I remembered what it felt like to have nothing. And I remembered what it felt like when someone helped me anyway. Eliza said nothing. I'm not looking for anything from your mother, Caleb continued. I'm not looking to replace your pa or take what's yours. I just saw a family that needed help on Christmas Eve, that's all. A long silence stretched between them. Then Eliza picked up the journal. Thank you, she said quietly. It was barely a whisper, but it was enough. After Caleb left, Clara found Eliza sitting by the window, the journal open in her lap, the pencil moving slowly across the page. What are you writing? Eliza didn't look up. Things I want to remember. Like what? Like how the bacon tasted this morning. Like how Will laughed. Like how that man looked at you when he gave us the presents. Clara's heart skipped. How did he look at me? Like he was hoping for something, but also like he didn't expect to get it. Eliza finally looked up. I don't trust him, Mama. I know. But I don't hate him either. Not anymore. Clara sat down beside her daughter. Eliza, about what I said yesterday. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. You were right. I was running away. I was so desperate to escape Boston that I didn't think about what I was taking you into. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Grandma Hollister said you trapped Pa, that you got pregnant on purpose so he'd have to marry you. Clara's blood ran cold. What? She told me, the night before we left. She said you were a schemer, and that Pa would still be alive if he'd never met you. Clara couldn't breathe. Eliza, that's not... I know. Eliza's voice was steady. I know it's not true. Pa loved you. He told me so lots of times. But Grandma... She swallowed hard. Grandma was mean, and I was scared. And when you said we were leaving, part of me was glad. But part of me was angry too, because leaving meant admitting that everything was broken. Clara pulled her daughter close. Eliza resisted for a moment, then collapsed into her arms. I'm sorry, Clara whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. It's okay, Mama. No, it's not. But it will be. I promise. They sat there until the sun went down. The next morning, Clara woke with a decision already made. She dressed quickly, brushed her hair, and told Leona she was going into town. Where to? Margaret Briggs. I need to see that ranch. Leona nodded. Want company? No, this is something I need to do alone. She walked through Silver Creek with her head high. People stared. People whispered. A woman outside the general store said something to her companion that made them both laugh. Clara didn't care. She found Margaret at the boarding house packing her things. Mrs. Hollister. Margaret looked surprised. I didn't expect to see you. I want to see it. The ranch. Samuel's ranch. Are you sure? No, but I need to see what I'm deciding about. They rode out together in Margaret's rented buggy. The road was muddy from melting snow, and the going was slow. But Clara barely noticed. All she could think about was the letter. Welcome home. The ranch came into view as they crested a small hill. It wasn't grand. A wooden house, a barn, a few outbuildings, fences stretching across brown fields, mountains rising in the distance, their peaks still white with snow. But it was real. It was solid. It was something. He built most of it himself, Margaret said quietly. Took him 5 years. Clara stepped down from the buggy and walked toward the house. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped inside. It smelled like dust and cold and something else, something that might have been loneliness. A table sat in the middle of the main room, 2 chairs pushed neatly under it. A fireplace dominated one wall, cold now, ashes gray in the grate. A rocking chair sat by the window, worn smooth by years of use. Clara walked through the rooms one by one. The bedroom with its iron bed and patchwork quilt. The small room that might have been meant for children. The kitchen with its cast iron stove and rows of mason jars on wooden shelves. Everywhere she looked, she saw Samuel Briggs. Not the man himself, but the shape of him. The life he'd built. The life he'd wanted to share. She stopped in front of the window and looked out at the land. He really wanted us, she said. It wasn't a question. More than anything, Margaret replied. Clara closed her eyes. She thought about Boston, about the cramped apartment where they'd lived after Thomas died, about the way her in-laws had looked at her like she was something to be scraped off their shoes, about the night she'd found the advertisement for mail-order brides and felt for the first time in months a tiny spark of hope. She thought about her children, about Will's laughter and Lily's sweetness and Eliza's fierce protective love. She thought about Caleb Stoneridge standing in the snow with his hat in his hands, offering help to a stranger because someone had once helped him. She thought about Samuel Briggs, who had died alone calling out for a woman he'd never met. Welcome home. Clara opened her eyes. I'll take it, she said. The ranch. I'll take it. Margaret smiled through her tears. He would have been so happy. I know. Clara turned from the window. I know. They rode back to town in silence. When Clara walked into Leona's house, her children were waiting. Well? Eliza demanded. What did you decide? Clara looked at her 3 children, her whole world standing in a borrowed kitchen, watching her with eyes full of fear and hope. Pack your things, she said. We're going home. Will whooped. Lily burst into tears. Eliza just stood there frozen like she couldn't quite believe it. Home, she whispered. Home, Clara confirmed. Our home. A ranch with a house and a barn and land that belongs to us. Not borrowed. Not temporary. Ours. Eliza's face crumpled. She crossed the room in 3 steps and threw her arms around her mother. Clara held her tight. We're going to be okay, baby, she whispered. We're going to be okay. That night, as the children slept, Leona sat with Clara by the fire. You sure about this? Clara nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. Running a ranch ain't easy, especially for a woman alone. I know. Clara stared into the flames. But I'm not alone. I've got my children, and I've got... She trailed off. Leona raised an eyebrow. You've got what? Clara thought about Caleb, about the way he'd helped her without asking for anything in return, about the wooden toys and the quiet kindness and the way he looked at her like she was worth looking at. I've got help, she said finally, whether I deserve it or not. Leona smiled. That's the thing about help, Mrs. Hollister. You don't have to deserve it. You just have to accept it. Clara nodded slowly. Outside, the wind howled, and the snow began to fall again. But inside, wrapped in borrowed blankets by a borrowed fire, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt hope. They moved into the ranch 3 days after Christmas. Clara stood in the doorway of Samuel Briggs's house, her house now, and watched her children explore. Will ran from room to room touching everything. Lily found the rocking chair by the window and claimed it immediately, her doll perched on her lap like a tiny queen. Eliza walked through the space slowly, carefully, like she was memorizing every corner. "It's big," Eliza said finally. "It is. Bigger than our place in Boston. Much bigger." Eliza turned to face her mother. "What if we can't do this?" Clara crossed the room and took her daughter's hands. "Then we'll fail together. But we're going to try first." "Okay." Eliza nodded. "Okay." The first week was chaos. Clara had never run a ranch. She'd never fed cattle or mucked stalls or fixed fence posts that had rotted through from years of neglect. She learned fast because she had to. Because her children were watching. Because failure wasn't something she could afford. Caleb came by on the third day. He didn't ask permission. He just showed up at dawn with a toolbox and a coil of rope, and by noon, he'd fixed the barn door that had been hanging off its hinges. "You don't have to do this," Clara said, bringing him coffee. "I know." "Then why are you—" He took the cup without looking at her. "Because the door was broken." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." He came back the next day, and the day after that, always at dawn, always with something to fix or build or repair. He never stayed for meals. He never asked for anything. He just worked quiet and steady like he'd been doing it his whole life, which Clara supposed he had. By the end of the second week, the ranch was starting to look like a home. The fence posts were solid. The barn was clean. The cattle, what few remained after Samuel's death, were fed and watered. And Clara's children were changing. Will followed Caleb everywhere, asking questions that never seemed to end. "How do you rope a cow? Why do horses sleep standing up? Can I ride one? Can I? Caleb answered every question with patience. Clara didn't know was possible. Lily had started drawing. She filled page after page with pictures of the ranch, the mountains, the animals. She drew Caleb once tall and broad, standing by the fence with his hat in his hand. When she showed it to him, he didn't say anything. He just nodded and tucked it into his coat pocket. Even Eliza was softening. She still watched Caleb with suspicious eyes. She still questioned everything he did. But she'd stopped calling him that man and started calling him by his name. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then Marcus Briggs came to town. Clara was in the general store when she first heard the name. "Did you see him?" Ruth Fenley was saying to another woman. "Rode in this morning on a black horse. Said he's Samuel's cousin. Said he's here to settle the estate." Clara's blood went cold. "Settle the estate," the other woman repeated. "I thought that mail-order bride got everything." "That's what he wants to talk about, I reckon. Seems he thinks she don't have a legal claim." Clara set down the bag of flowers she'd been holding and walked out of the store without buying anything. She found him at the boarding house. He was standing on the porch smoking a thin cigar when she approached. Tall, clean-shaven, wearing a black coat that probably cost more than everything Clara owned. His eyes found hers before she'd even reached the steps. "Mrs. Hollister." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I was hoping we'd meet." "Mr. Briggs, I presume?" "Marcus Briggs, Samuel's cousin." He tapped ash from his cigar. "I've heard a lot about you." "I can imagine. Can you—" He stepped down from the porch close enough that Clara could smell the tobacco on his breath. "See, what I've heard is that a woman from Boston showed up here with 3 children and no money, claiming to be my cousin's bride. A bride he never actually married." "He died before I arrived." "Yes. Convenient that." Clara's jaw tightened. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Marcus pulled a folded document from his coat. Samuel's will names his wife as sole heir. But you're not his wife, Mrs. Hollister. You're just a woman who answered an advertisement. His sister gave me the ranch. She said it's what Samuel wanted. Margaret is a grieving girl who doesn't understand the law. The will is very clear. Wife. Not fiancé. Not mail-order bride. Wife. He held out the document. I'm prepared to offer you a settlement. $500 to walk away quietly. Sign this paper, take your children, and leave Silver Creek. Clara didn't take the paper. No. Marcus's smile flickered. Excuse me. I said no. Samuel wanted me to have this ranch. He wrote it in his letter. He wanted my children to have a home. What Samuel wanted doesn't matter. What matters is what's legal. Then take me to court. A long pause stretched between them. You don't want to do that, Mrs. Hollister. Why not? Because courts are expensive, and slow, and very interested in character. He leaned closer. A woman alone with 3 children, no husband, no family, running a ranch she didn't earn. How do you think that looks? Clara's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. It looks like a mother trying to build a life for her children. It looks like a schemer who came west looking for easy money. Marcus stepped back. I'll give you a week to reconsider. After that, things get complicated. He walked away without another word. Clara stood there for a long time, frozen, watching him go. When she finally turned around, Caleb was standing across the street. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His face said it all. How much did you hear? She asked. Enough. He's going to try to take the ranch. I know. What do I do? Caleb walked toward her, his boots crunching in the mud. You fight. I don't know how to fight him. You learn. He stopped in front of her. You've learned everything else. Clara looked up at him. His eyes were steady, calm, like they always were. Why do you care so much? She asked. About me, about my children. Why? Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because you remind me of her. Your wife, Mary. Yeah. He looked away. She was fierce like you, stubborn. Wouldn't take help from anyone even when she needed it. A muscle twitched in his jaw. I couldn't save her. The fever took her too fast. But maybe. He trailed off. Maybe what? Maybe I can help you, if you'll let me. Clara felt something crack open in her chest. Not the bad kind of cracking, the kind that let light in. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The rumors started the next day. Clara noticed it in the way people looked at her, the sideways glances, the whispered conversations that stopped when she walked past, the sudden silence that fell whenever she entered a room. She heard the first one outside the church. They say she was running from something back east, some kind of scandal. I heard her husband's family threw her out, said she was unfit. Unfit for what? To be a mother, I reckon. Why else would a woman run that far? Clara's stomach turned to ice. Eliza heard them too. She came home that evening with fire in her eyes and dirt on her dress. Who was it? Clara asked. Tommy Harper. He said... Eliza's voice cracked. He said you were a bad woman. He said Grandma Hollister told everyone back east that you trapped Pa, that you killed him. Eliza. Is it true? Her daughter's face was twisted with fear and anger. Did you do something bad? Is that why we had to leave? Clara sank into a chair. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Sit down, baby. I need to tell you something. Eliza sat. Her hands were trembling. Clara took a deep breath. When I met your father, I was 17 years old. He was 22 working at the shipyard. My family didn't approve. They said he wasn't good enough, that he'd never amount to anything. She smiled faintly. They were wrong. He was the best man I ever knew." Eliza said nothing. "We got married in secret. When my family found out, they disowned me. I didn't care. I had your father. That was enough." Clara's voice wavered. "Then you came along, and Lily, and Will, and everything was perfect. What happened? The accident. You remember, the beam that fell at the shipyard. Pa died. Pa died." Clara wiped her eyes. "And after he was gone, his family decided they wanted you. Not me. Just you children. They said I couldn't provide for you. They said I was too young, too poor, too." She shook her head. "They tried to take you away from me, Eliza, through the courts. They had money. They had lawyers. They had everything." Eliza's face had gone pale. "I didn't know. I didn't want you to know. You were so young. All of you were so young." Clara reached for her daughter's hands. "I fought them for 2 years, spent every penny we had, and when the money ran out, I knew I had to leave. If I stayed, they would have won. They would have taken you away from me. So you ran." "I ran. I found Samuel's advertisement, and I answered it, because it was the only way I could think of to keep us together." Clara's voice broke. "I'm not a schemer, Eliza. I'm not a bad woman. I'm just a mother who would do anything to protect her children." Eliza was crying now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to know how close we came to losing everything." Clara pulled her daughter into her arms. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." They held each other for a long time. When Eliza finally pulled away, her eyes were red but clear. "That man, Marcus, he's trying to do the same thing, isn't he? Take what's ours." "Yes." "Then we fight him." Eliza's jaw set. "Like you fought before. We don't run this time." Clara looked at her daughter, her fierce, brave, beautiful daughter. "No," she said, "we don't run." Sunday came, and with it the weekly church service. Clara had been dreading it all week. She knew what waited for her there, the stares, the whispers, the judgment of a town that had already made up its mind about her. But she went anyway. She dressed her children in their best clothes. She brushed Lily's hair until it shone. She made Will wash behind his ears twice. She helped Eliza pin up her braids. And then they walked into town together. The church was packed. Everyone in Silver Creek came to Sunday service, whether they believed in God or not. It was where news was shared, gossip was traded, deals were made. Clara felt every eye on her as she walked down the aisle. She found a seat in the back row and settled her children on either side of her. Will squirmed. Lily clutched her doll. Eliza sat rigid, her chin high. The sermon was about forgiveness. Clara barely heard it. Afterward, as people filed out into the pale winter sunlight, Marcus Briggs stepped into her path. "Mrs. Hollister." His smile was sharp. "I see you're still here. I told you, I'm not leaving. And I told you, things would get complicated." He gestured toward the crowd. "Have you noticed how people look at you now? Have you heard what they're saying?" "I've heard." "Then you understand. This town doesn't want you here. They don't trust a woman who runs from her past. They don't trust a woman who can't keep a husband." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "That's not—" "It doesn't matter what's true, Mrs. Hollister. It matters what people believe." Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Sign the paper. Take the money. Walk away while you still can." "No. You're making a mistake. Maybe." Clara met his eyes. "But it's my mistake to make." Marcus's expression darkened. He opened his mouth to speak. "Is there a problem here?" Caleb's voice came from behind her. Calm, steady, dangerous. He stepped up beside Clara, his presence solid and reassuring. Marcus's eyes flickered between them. "Mr. Stoneridge, I wasn't aware you were involved in this matter." "I'm involved in anything that happens in this town." "How noble of you!" Marcus's smile returned, but it was thin now. Forced. Tell me, do you make a habit of defending women with questionable reputations? Caleb didn't blink. I make a habit of defending people who deserve it. And you think she deserves it? I know she does. The crowd had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Marcus looked around, assessing. He was a smart man. He knew when he was outnumbered. Very well. He straightened his coat. Enjoy your Sunday, Mrs. Hollister. Mr. Stoneridge. He tipped his hat. We'll continue this conversation later. He walked away, and the crowd parted to let him through. Clara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Thank you, she said quietly. Caleb nodded once. You should go home. Get the children settled. What about you? I've got some business in town. He looked at her, and something passed between them. Something unspoken. I'll come by tomorrow. Caleb. Go home, Clara. It was the first time he'd used her first name. She gathered her children and left. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat by the fire and read Samuel's letter again. I want to build a life with you, Clara. A real one. The kind that lasts. She traced her finger over his handwriting. He had been a stranger. A name on a piece of paper. A promise she'd never been able to keep. But somehow his words still meant something. A knock at the door made her jump. She grabbed the poker from the fireplace and crossed the room slowly. Who's there? It's me. Caleb's voice. Clara relaxed and opened the door. He stood on the porch, hat in hand, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. What happened? I talked to some folks in town. About Marcus. About his claims. Caleb stepped inside. He's been busy. Sent letters to Helena trying to get the will contested. Talked to the judge in Bozeman about declaring you an unfit guardian. Clara's blood went cold. An unfit guardian. He's using everything he can find. The rumors about Boston. The fact that you came here alone. That you've got no family, no money, no legal standing. But I have the ranch. Margaret gave it to me. Margaret's word against his. And he's got lawyers. Caleb's jaw tightened. He's trying to bury you, Clara. Same way your in-laws tried to. Clara sank into a chair. What do I do? Caleb crouched in front of her, his eyes level with hers. You stop hiding. I'm not hiding. Yes, you are. You've been hiding since you got here, keeping your head down, hoping people won't notice you. He took her hands. But they've already noticed. They've already made up their minds. The only way to change that is to show them who you really are. And who am I? A woman who crossed 1,000 miles to give her children a better life. A woman who lost everything and kept fighting anyway. A woman who refuses to give up even when the whole world's against her. He squeezed her hands. That's who you are, Clara. And it's time this town saw it. Clara looked at him. This man who had appeared out of nowhere and saved her life. This man who asked for nothing and gave everything. This man who looked at her like she was worth looking at. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. What if I fail? Then you fail, and you try again. He stood, pulling her to her feet. But you don't give up. Not now. Not ever. Clara nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if she could beat Marcus Briggs and his lawyers and his money. But she knew one thing. She wasn't running anymore. Clara did what Caleb told her. She stopped hiding. She walked into town the next morning with her head high. When Ruth Fenley whispered to her friend at the general store, Clara walked right up to them. If you've got something to say about me, Mrs. Fenley, you can say it to my face. Ruth's face went red. I wasn't. Yes, you were. And I understand. You don't know me. All you know is what Marcus Briggs has been telling people. Clara folded her arms. So let me tell you the truth. I came here to marry Samuel Briggs. He died before I arrived. His sister gave me his ranch because that's what Samuel wanted. I'm not a schemer. I'm not a gold digger. I'm a widow with 3 children trying to build a life. That's all." Ruth stared at her. The other woman stared too. "Well," Ruth said finally, "I suppose that's clear enough." "I hope so." Clara picked up her basket. "Now if you'll excuse me, I've got supplies to buy." She walked away without looking back. Word spread fast in a small town. By the end of the week, half of Silver Creek had heard about Clara's confrontation with Ruth Fenley. Some people admired her for it. Others thought she was too bold, too proud, too much. Clara didn't care what they thought. She cared about her children. She cared about her ranch. She cared about surviving. And she cared about Caleb, though she wasn't ready to admit that yet. He came by every day now. Not just to fix things, but to help with the cattle, to teach Will how to ride, to sit with Clara on the porch after the children went to bed. They talked about everything. About Samuel and Mary. About Boston and Texas. About the lives they'd lost and the lives they were trying to build. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Clara asked one night. "Leaving where?" "Here, Silver Creek. Starting over somewhere else." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "I used to. After Mary died, I thought about selling the ranch and heading south. Maybe California. Somewhere warm." "Why didn't you?" "Because running doesn't fix anything. I learned that the hard way." He looked at her. "You can't outrun grief, Clara. You can only outlast it." Clara nodded slowly. "I've been running my whole life. From my family. From my in-laws. From everything that hurt. And now I'm tired." She leaned back in her chair. "I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being scared. I just want to stop." "Then stop. It's not that simple." "It is that simple. You just have to decide." Caleb stood and walked to the edge of the porch. "You've already got everything you need, Clara. A home. A family. People who care about you." He turned to face her. "The only thing stopping you is you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "What if I lose it all? What if Marcus wins and I end up with nothing?" "Then you'll still have your children, and you'll still have yourself." Caleb's voice was gentle. "That's more than a lot of people have." Clara wiped her eyes. "You make it sound easy." "It ain't easy. Nothing worth having ever is." He smiled slightly. "But you already knew that." The storm came 2 weeks later. Clara woke to a sky the color of iron and a wind that rattled the windows like bones. She knew what was coming. Everyone in Silver Creek knew. This was going to be the worst storm in years. "Get the animals in the barn," she told Eliza. "Make sure the water troughs are full. We might be snowed in for days." "What about the fence posts on the north side? Caleb said they needed reinforcing." "There's no time. The storm's coming too fast." They worked all morning, Clara and Eliza side by side, while Will helped carry water and Lily gathered eggs from the henhouse. By noon the first flakes were falling. By 2 o'clock the world had turned white. Clara herded the children inside and bolted the door. "Everyone stay put," she said. "No one goes outside until this passes." Will pressed his face against the window. "But Mama, what about the horses?" "They're in the barn. They'll be fine." "What about Mr. Caleb?" Clara's heart clenched. She hadn't thought about Caleb. His ranch was 3 miles away across open land with no shelter. "He's a grown man," she said more to herself than to Will. "He knows how to handle a storm." But she couldn't stop thinking about him. The hours crawled by. Clara made stew on the wood stove. She read stories to Lily and Will. She helped Eliza with her writing. Outside the wind screamed and the snow fell in sheets so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Lily fell asleep first, curled up in the rocking chair with her doll. Will followed his head, dropping onto the table, where he'd been playing with his wooden horse. Eliza stayed awake watching the window. "You're worried about him," she said quietly. Clara didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Yes." Do you love him? The question hit Clara like a punch to the chest. I don't know, she said honestly. I haven't let myself think about it. Why not? Because I'm scared. Because the last man I loved died and left me alone. Because I don't know if I can survive that again. Eliza was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Pa wouldn't want you to be alone forever. Clara looked at her daughter. What? Pa loved you. He always said you were the best thing that ever happened to him. And I think... Eliza swallowed hard. I think he'd want you to be happy, even if that means loving someone else. Clara's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being angry. Eliza stood and walked to her mother. I'm sorry, Mama, for all the things I said, for blaming you, for making everything harder. Clara pulled her daughter into her arms. You don't have to apologize, baby. You were scared. We all were. I'm still scared. Me too. Clara held her tight. But we're going to be okay, I promise. They held each other while the storm raged outside. Clara didn't know when she fell asleep, but she woke to silence. The wind had stopped. The snow had stopped. Everything was still. She sat up slowly, her neck stiff from sleeping in the chair. Gray morning light filtered through the frosted windows. Mama. It was Eliza's voice, sharp, scared. What is it? Lily's gone. Clara's blood turned to ice. She was on her feet in an instant, searching the house, the bedroom, the kitchen, the pantry, every corner, every closet, every hiding place. Lily, Lily, where are you? No answer. Will stumbled out of bed, rubbing his eyes. What's wrong? Your sister's missing. Did you see her leave? No, I was sleeping. Clara ran to the door and threw it open. The world was white. Snow piled 3 feet high against the house. The barn was barely visible through the drifts, and there in the snow were small footprints leading away from the house. Lily! Clara screamed. Lily! Nothing. Just the vast, empty silence of a world buried in white. Clara turned to Eliza. Stay here. Watch your brother. Don't leave this house for any reason. Mama, you can't go out there alone. Stay here. Clara grabbed her coat and boots. I'll find her, I promise. She plunged into the snow. The cold hit her like a wall. It stole her breath, burned her lungs, made her eyes water. But she kept moving, following the footprints, praying they wouldn't disappear. Lily, can you hear me? Lily. The footprints led toward the barn. Clara pushed through the drifts, her legs burning, her heart pounding. The barn door was cracked open. She pushed inside. Lily! A small voice, barely audible. Mama! Clara sobbed with relief. Lily was huddled in the corner of a stall, shivering. Her nightgown, soaked through a gray barn cat, clutched in her arms. Baby, what were you doing out here? The kitty was crying. Lily's teeth were chattering. I heard him through the window. He was scared of the storm. I had to help him. Clara scooped her daughter into her arms. Lily was freezing. Her lips were blue. Her skin was like ice. We have to get you warm. Come on. She carried Lily through the snow back toward the house. But halfway there she heard something. Hoofbeats. She turned. A horse was struggling through the drifts, and on its back was Caleb. Clara! He jumped down and ran toward her. I came as fast as I could. The storm. He saw Lily in her arms. Is she hurt? She's freezing. I found her in the barn. Get her inside. I'll be right behind you. Clara ran. Inside, Eliza had already started the fire. Clara stripped Lily out of her wet nightgown and wrapped her in every blanket they had. She rubbed her daughter's hands and feet, trying to force warmth back into her frozen body. Is she going to be okay? Will's voice was small, scared. Yes, she's going to be fine. Clara didn't know if she was lying or not. Caleb came through the door, his face red from the cold, his coat crusted with snow. I brought supplies, he said. Food, firewood, extra blankets. I figured you might need them. How did you know? I didn't. He stopped. I was worried about you, all of you. Clara looked at him, really looked at him. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded and turned away. I'll get the fire built up. The next few hours were a blur. Clara held Lily close to the fire, rubbing warmth into her limbs, singing soft songs she remembered from her own childhood. Slowly the color returned to Lily's cheeks. Her shivering stopped. Her eyes fluttered open. Mama, I'm here, baby. Is the kitty okay? Clara laughed through her tears. Yes, sweetheart. The kitty's fine. Good. Lily closed her eyes again. I was scared he'd be cold. By evening, Lily was sleeping peacefully, her breathing deep and even her skin warm to the touch. Clara sat beside her exhausted, running on nothing but fear and love, and the desperate need to keep her children safe. Caleb appeared at her side with a cup of coffee. She's going to be all right, he said. I know. Clara took the cup. Her hands were shaking. But I keep thinking, what if I hadn't woken up? What if I hadn't found her in time? You did find her. That's what matters. It's not enough. Clara's voice cracked. I can't lose her, Caleb. I can't lose any of them. They're all I have. Caleb sat down beside her. You're not going to lose them. You don't know that. I know you. He looked at her, and his eyes were steady. I know you'd walk through fire for those children. I know you'd fight the whole world to keep them safe. And I know that as long as you're breathing, nothing's going to take them from you. Clara felt something break inside her. Not the bad kind of breaking. The kind that lets all the fear and pain and loneliness pour out. She started to cry. Caleb didn't say anything. He just put his arm around her and held her while she sobbed. I'm so tired, she whispered. I'm so tired of being strong. Then let me be strong for a while. I can't. I don't know how to let anyone help me. You're learning. He tightened his grip. That's all any of us can do. They sat like that for a long time, Clara's head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. Two broken people holding each other together. Finally, Clara pulled back. I need to tell you something. What? I was scared of you. When you first helped us, I thought... She shook her head. I thought you wanted something. I thought there had to be a catch. And now? Now I think you might be the best man I've ever known. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm not a good man, Clara. I've made mistakes, done things I'm not proud of, lost people I should have saved. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. He looked at her, and something shifted in his eyes. Something that had been closed for a long time, cracked open just a little. Mary used to say that. She sounds wise. She was. He smiled faintly. She would have liked you. I wish I could have met her. Me too. Another silence fell between them. But this one was different. This one was warm. Stay tonight, Clara said. The storm might not be over. It's not safe to travel. Are you sure? I'm sure. She looked toward the bedroom where her children slept. The children. They feel safe when you're here. And so do I. Caleb nodded slowly. Okay. I'll stay. He slept on the floor by the fire, wrapped in a blanket Clara had given him. She lay awake for hours, listening to his breathing, thinking about everything that had happened. In the morning, she woke to find Eliza standing over Caleb, watching him with an expression Clara couldn't read. Eliza? Her daughter didn't look away from Caleb. He stayed all night, Yes. To make sure we were safe. Yes. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. Then she knelt beside Caleb and shook his shoulder. He woke instantly, his hand reaching for something that wasn't there. Easy, Eliza said. It's just me. Caleb blinked, orienting himself. Eliza, what is it? I wanted to say thank you. The words came out stiff, like they cost her something. For finding Mama, for staying, for... She swallowed. For everything. Caleb sat up slowly. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Because I was wrong about you. Eliza's voice cracked. I thought you wanted something from us. I thought you were like everyone else. But you're not. She looked at him with eyes that were too old for 12. You actually care. I do. Why? Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because your mother reminds me that there's still good in this world. And because you 3 kids remind me what I was fighting for, back when I still remembered how to fight. Eliza stared at him. Then slowly, she held out her hand. Caleb took it. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't a declaration. It was just a handshake between 2 people who had finally decided to trust each other. But it was everything. Later that day, after the snow had melted enough to walk, Caleb announced he was going back to his ranch. The animals need tending, he said, and I've imposed long enough. You haven't imposed, Clara said. You saved us. I did what anyone would do. No. She stepped closer to him. You did what only you would do. He looked at her, and something passed between them. Something unspoken. Something that had been building since that first night outside the iron pot, when he'd offered a stranger a plate of food and asked for nothing in return. Clara, don't. She held up her hand. Don't say anything yet. There's too much happening. Marcus, the ranch, everything. She took a breath. But when it's over, when all of this is over, I want you to know something. What? I'm not scared anymore. She met his eyes. Not of you, not of what I feel, not of any of it. Caleb's breath caught. Clara, I... Go home, she said softly. Take care of your animals, and come back when you can. He nodded slowly. I'll come back. I know you will. He left without another word. Clara watched him go until he disappeared over the hill. Then she turned back to the house where her children were waiting. Mama! Will ran up to her. Is Mr. Caleb coming back? Yes, baby, he's coming back. Good, Will grinned. Because I still need to learn how to rope a cow, Clara laughed. It felt strange. It felt good. Then I guess he'd better hurry. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat by the fire and let herself think about the future. For the first time in years, it didn't terrify her. The snow melted slowly through February. Clara watched it disappear day by day, revealing the brown earth beneath the first stubborn shoots of grass pushing through the mud. Spring was coming. She could feel it in the air in the lengthening days, in the way her children laughed more easily now. But Marcus Briggs wasn't finished. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a writer from Helena. Clara stood on her porch and read it twice before she understood what it meant. A court date. March 15th. She was being summoned to appear before a judge to defend her claim to Samuel's ranch. Her hands were steady as she folded the paper. Mama. Eliza appeared in the doorway. What is it? Nothing, baby. Just business. You're lying. Eliza's voice was flat. I can always tell when you're lying. Clara sighed. Marcus is taking me to court. He wants the ranch. Can he do that? He can try. Eliza's jaw tightened. What are we going to do? We're going to fight. Clara tucked the letter into her apron pocket. We're going to show up in that courtroom and tell the truth. and we're going to pray that the truth is enough." Caleb came by that evening like he always did now. Clara handed him the letter without a word. He read it. His face didn't change. "When? 3 weeks. You got a lawyer? Can't afford one. Then we'll find another way." He handed the letter back. "You're not alone in this, Clara. You know that, right?" "I know." But knowing it and believing it were two different things. The days leading up to the court date were the longest of Clara's life. She kept working. She kept caring for her children. She kept running the ranch with Eliza's help and Caleb's steady presence. But underneath it all was a current of fear that never quite went away. What if she lost? What if Marcus convinced the judge that she had no claim? What if her children ended up on the streets again with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a mother who had failed them? She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. "You're going to make yourself sick," Leona told her one afternoon. She'd come by with bread and a pot of stew, the way she did every week now. "That man wants you scared. Don't give him the satisfaction." "I'm not scared of him." "Then what are you scared of?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. "Losing everything again. Starting over again. Watching my children suffer because I wasn't strong enough to protect them." Leona sat down across from her. "You listen to me, Clara Hollister. I've watched you these past 2 months. I've seen you work harder than any woman I know. I've seen you stand up to gossip and lies and a man who wanted to crush you. And I've seen your children grow strong because they've got a mother who refuses to quit." She leaned forward. "You're not going to lose. You hear me? You're not going to lose." Clara wanted to believe her. She wanted to so badly it hurt. What if the judge doesn't see it that way? Then we'll make him see. Leona stood. "Now eat that stew before it gets cold. You've got a fight ahead of you, and you can't fight on an empty stomach." The night before the court date, Caleb came to the ranch after dark. Clara was sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. She didn't turn when she heard his footsteps. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No." He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You're going to be fine tomorrow." "You don't know that." "I know you." He looked at her, and his eyes were steady. "I know what you've survived. I know what you're capable of. And I know that a man like Marcus Briggs doesn't stand a chance against a woman like you." Clara laughed. It came out shaky. "I wish I had your faith." "It's not faith. It's fact." Caleb reached over and took her hand. "Clara, I need to tell you something. Before tomorrow. Before everything changes." Her heart skipped. "What?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I love you." Clara stopped breathing. "I know it's not the right time," he continued. "I know you've got enough on your mind without me adding to it. But I've been holding this in for weeks, and I can't hold it anymore." He turned to face her. "I love you, Clara. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you'd burn down the world to protect your children. I love the way you laugh when you're tired and the way you argue with me about fence posts. I love everything about you." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Caleb." "You don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know." He squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm going to be there. And whatever happens after, I'm not going anywhere." Clara couldn't speak. The words were stuck somewhere between her heart and her throat. So she did the only thing she could. She leaned over and kissed him. It was soft, brief, just a brush of lips against lips, but it said everything she couldn't. When she pulled back, Caleb was staring at her like she'd given him the world. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have for a while now." He smiled, the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. "Then we're going to be okay." "Yeah." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I think we are." The courtroom was smaller than Clara expected. Wooden benches, a raised platform for the judge, a table for each side. Everything smelled like dust and paper and old leather. Marcus Briggs sat on one side with his lawyer, a thin man with sharp eyes and sharper teeth. Clara sat on the other side alone. But she wasn't really alone. Behind her, filling the benches, were the people of Silver Creek. Leona was there with Joseph beside her. Big Tom had closed the iron pot for the day. Sister Catherine sat in the back row with her hands folded. Ruth Fenley, who had once whispered about Clara in the general store, was there too. Even the Harper boys had come, sitting awkwardly in their Sunday best. And in the front row, right behind Clara, sat her children. Will squirming in his seat, Lily clutching her doll, Eliza with her jaw set and her eyes fierce. Caleb stood at the end of the row, his hat in his hands, watching her with steady eyes. Clara took a deep breath. The judge entered, an older man with gray hair and a face like weathered stone. He sat down heavily and shuffled through papers. "This hearing is to determine the rightful ownership of the property known as the Briggs Ranch," he announced. "Mr. Marcus Briggs claims the will of Samuel Briggs is invalid due to the deceased's failure to legally marry the named heir. Mrs. Clara Hollister claims the property was given to her by Margaret Briggs, Samuel's sister, in accordance with Samuel's wishes." He looked up. "Mr. Briggs, you may present your case." Marcus's lawyer stood. He spoke for 20 minutes using words like precedent and legal standing and clear intent. He talked about the sanctity of wills and the importance of following the letter of the law. He painted Clara as an opportunist, a woman who had come west looking for easy money. Clara listened without flinching. When the lawyer finished, the judge turned to her. "Mrs. Hollister, you may respond." Clara stood slowly. Her knees were shaking. Her hands were cold, but her voice was steady. "Your Honor, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about precedents or legal standing, but I know about truth, and the truth is simple." She took a breath. "Samuel Briggs wrote to me because he was lonely. He offered me a home because he wanted a family. He named me in his will because he believed, truly believed, that I would be his wife. The only reason I'm not is because he died 3 days before I arrived." Her voice cracked. "I never asked for his land. I never asked for his money. All I asked for was a chance to build a life for my children. That's all I've ever wanted." The courtroom was silent. "I have a letter," Clara continued, "written by Samuel the night before he got sick. In it he welcomed me home. He talked about the future he wanted to build with me and my children. He signed it, yours. Not sincerely, not regards. Yours." She pulled the letter from her pocket. "This was his intent, Your Honor. Not the letter of the law, the letter of his heart." She held the paper out. The judge took it. "Read it slowly." His expression didn't change. "Is there anyone who can verify the authenticity of this letter?" A voice came from the back of the room. "I can." Everyone turned. Margaret Briggs stood in the doorway. She was pale and thin, like she hadn't slept in weeks, but her voice was strong. "That's my brother's handwriting," she said, walking forward. "I'd know it anywhere. And every word in that letter is true. Samuel loved Mrs. Hollister before he ever met her. He talked about her constantly. He planned his whole future around her." She stopped in front of the judge's bench. "My brother wanted her to have that ranch. It was his dying wish. And if this court takes it from her, it will be spitting on his grave." Marcus shot to his feet. "Margaret, what are you doing? What I should have done months ago." She turned to face him. "I'm done being quiet, Marcus. I'm done letting you twist Samuel's memory to serve your greed." Her voice shook. "He was my brother. He deserved better than this, and so does she." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. "Order, order." It took several minutes to restore calm. When it was quiet again, the judge looked at Marcus. "Mr. Briggs, do you have anything to add?" Marcus's face was red. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. He shook his head. "No, Your Honor." The judge nodded slowly. "I've heard enough." He shuffled his papers. The will of Samuel Briggs names his wife as sole heir. While Mrs. Hollister was not legally married to the deceased, the evidence presented today makes clear that Samuel Briggs intended for her to inherit his property. His letter, verified by his sister, demonstrates clear intent. Furthermore, the testimony of the community suggests that Mrs. Hollister has worked to maintain and improve the property in good faith. He looked at Clara. "The ranch belongs to you, Mrs. Hollister. This case is dismissed." The gavel came down. Clara couldn't move. She stood there frozen as the courtroom exploded around her. People were cheering. Leona was crying. Big Tom was laughing and slapping people on the back. Then small arms wrapped around her waist. "Mama!" Will was jumping up and down. "We won! We won!" Lily grabbed her hand. "Does this mean we get to stay?" "Yes, baby." Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "We get to stay." Eliza appeared in front of her. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "You did it, Mama." "We did it." Clara pulled all three children into her arms. "All of us." Over their heads, she saw Caleb watching her. He tipped his hat and smiled. She smiled back. Outside the courtroom, the sun was shining. People surrounded Clara, shaking her hand, patting her back, offering congratulations. Ruth Fenley apologized for the rumors she'd spread. The Harper boys offered to help with the spring planting. Sister Catherine promised to bring by a casserole. Clara accepted it all in a daze. Then a hand touched her elbow. Margaret Briggs stood there looking uncertain. "Mrs. Hollister, I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you at first. For not speaking up sooner." Clara shook her head. "You spoke up when it mattered. That's what counts. Samuel would have been lucky to know you. I would have been lucky to know him." They stood there for a moment, two women connected by a man neither of them would ever see again. Then Margaret smiled. "Take care of that ranch. It meant everything to him." "I will." Clara took her hand. "I promise." Margaret nodded and walked away. Clara watched her go until Caleb appeared at her side. "Ready to go home." Home. The word felt different now. Fuller. Realer. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." They rode back to the ranch together. Clara and Caleb in the front of the wagon, the children in the back still buzzing with excitement. Will couldn't stop talking about the courtroom. "Did you see the judge's face when Margaret showed up? He looked like he swallowed a frog." Lily was planning what she'd plant in the garden, now that they were staying for good. "Roses, Mama. Can we plant roses and sunflowers? And carrots for the horses?" Even Eliza was smiling. Really smiling, without the shadow of worry that usually darkened her eyes. Clara looked at Caleb. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what? For believing in me. When I couldn't believe in myself." He didn't say anything. He just reached over and took her hand. They held on the whole way home. Spring came fast after that. The snow disappeared completely. The mud dried into solid earth. Green shoots pushed up everywhere, covering the brown fields in a blanket of new life. Clara worked from dawn to dusk. There was so much to do. Fences to repair, fields to plow, animals to tend, a house to maintain. But she wasn't alone anymore. Caleb came by every day now. Not just to help, but to be there. To share meals with her family. To teach Will how to rope and ride. To sit with Lily while she drew pictures of the ranch. To talk with Eliza about books and ideas and the future she was starting to imagine for herself. He became part of their lives without anyone deciding it should happen. It just did. One evening in late April, after the children had gone to bed, Caleb asked Clara to walk with him. They went to the hill behind the barn, where you could see the whole valley spread out below. The sunset painted everything gold and pink and orange. "I've been thinking," Caleb said. "About what?" About the future. He turned to face her. About what I want it to look like. Clara's heart beat faster. And what do you want it to look like? Like this. He gestured at the view. Like this land. Like this sky. Like you and your children every morning and every evening for the rest of my life. Clara couldn't breathe. Caleb. I know it's soon. I know we've only known each other a few months. But I've spent enough time waiting for the right moment, and I've learned that the right moment is whenever you decide to take it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. This was Mary's. I've been holding on to it for 3 years, waiting to know what to do with it. And now I do. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple. Gold. Beautiful. Clara May Hollister. His voice was steady, but she could see his hands trembling. Will you marry me? Clara looked at the ring, then at Caleb, then at the ranch spread out below them, the home she had built from nothing, the life she had fought so hard to keep. She thought about Thomas, about the love they'd shared, about the way he'd looked at her on their wedding day, like she was the most precious thing in the world. She thought about Samuel, about the letters he'd written, about the home he'd offered, about the future that had died with him. She thought about her children, about Eliza's fierce protection, about Lily's gentle heart, about Will's boundless joy. And she thought about Caleb. This man who had found her at her lowest point and never once made her feel small. This man who gave without taking. This man who loved her children as if they were his own. Yes, she said. Caleb blinked. Yes. Yes. She was laughing now, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll marry you. He pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could feel his heart pounding against hers. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I love you too. She pulled back to look at him. I love you so much it scares me. Don't be scared. He slipped the ring onto her finger. We're going to be okay. I know. She smiled through her tears. I finally know. They told the children that night. Will whooped so loud, Clara was sure they could hear him in town. Does this mean Mr. Caleb's going to be my pa? Caleb crouched down to his level. Only if you want me to be. Will threw his arms around Caleb's neck. I want. Lily was quieter. She looked at the ring on Clara's finger, then at Caleb, then back at Clara. Is he going to live here now? She asked. Eventually, yes. Good. Lily nodded solemnly. The horses like him, and so do I. Eliza didn't say anything at first. Clara watched her daughter's face, searching for the old suspicion, the old anger. But it wasn't there anymore. Instead, Eliza walked up to Caleb and held out her hand. Welcome to the family, she said. Caleb shook it. Thank you, Eliza. Don't make me regret it. I won't. His voice was serious. I promise. Eliza nodded once. Then, surprising everyone, including herself, she hugged him. Clara's heart overflowed. They got married in June. It was a small ceremony. Just the family and a few friends. Leona stood as Clara's witness. Big Tom provided the food. Sister Catherine performed the blessing. Clara wore a simple white dress that Leona had helped her sew. Lily scattered wildflowers down the aisle. Will carried the rings on a little pillow that Eliza had embroidered. And when Clara said, I do, she meant it with every fiber of her being. Afterward, they had a party at the ranch. People came from all over Silver Creek. Even Ruth Fenley brought a pie. The Harper boys played fiddle. Children ran through the fields, shrieking with laughter. As the sun set, Clara stood on the porch and watched it all. Caleb came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Happy, he asked. More than I ever thought I could be. Good. He kissed her temple. You deserve it. Clara leaned back against him. Do you remember what you said to me that first night outside the iron pot? I said a lot of things. You said a full plate doesn't mean much if you eat it alone. I remember. Clara turned in his arms to face him. I'm not alone anymore. No. He smiled. Neither am I. They stood there together watching their family, their friends, their future spread out before them. Will ran past, chasing a dog that had wandered in from somewhere. Ma, Pa, did you see I almost caught him? Pa. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Go catch your dog, sweetheart, she called. He's not mine yet, but he will be. Caleb laughed. That boy's going to have a whole pack of strays by summer's end. Probably. Clara wiped her eyes. I don't mind. Eliza appeared at their side, slightly breathless. Mama Leona wants to know if we have more cider. The barrel's almost empty. There's another one in the cellar. Can you and Joseph bring it up? Sure. Eliza hesitated. Mama. Yes, baby. I'm glad we came here. She looked out at the party, at the people laughing and dancing and celebrating. I'm glad we didn't run again. Clara pulled her daughter close. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Eliza smiled and ran off. Lily wandered over a few minutes later, her flower crown wilting, her dress stained with grass. Mama, I'm tired. Clara scooped her up. Then let's get you to bed. Will you tell me a story? What kind of story? The one about the princess who crossed the whole world to find her home. Clara looked at Caleb. He smiled. I think I know that one, Clara said. She carried Lily inside Caleb, following behind. Will appeared from somewhere, grass in his hair and mud on his knees. Eliza came up from the cellar, Joseph trailing after her. They all gathered in the main room. Clara sat in the rocking chair by the window, Lily on her lap, Will at her feet, Eliza curled up on the settee. Caleb leaned against the doorframe watching. Once upon a time, Clara began, there was a woman who had lost everything. Her husband, her home, her hope. All she had left were her 3 children and a dream of something better. Was she scared? Lily asked sleepily. Terrified. But she kept going anyway, because that's what mothers do. What happened next? Clara looked around the room, at her children, at her husband, at the home she had built from nothing but love and determination. She found her way to a small town in the mountains, and there, when she had nothing left to give a stranger, shared his plate with her. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just saw a woman who needed help and decided to help her. Like Mr. Caleb, Will said. Like Mr. Caleb. Clara smiled at her husband. And slowly, day by day, the woman stopped running. She stopped being afraid. She started to build a life instead of escaping one. Did she find her home? Lily asked. Yes, baby, she did. Where was it? Clara pulled her daughter closer. It wasn't a place. It was the people she loved. Her children, her friends. The man who saw her at her worst and loved her anyway. She kissed Lily's forehead. Home isn't somewhere you find. It's something you build, nail by nail, day by day, heart by heart. Lily's eyes were closing. I like that story, she mumbled. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Later, after the children were asleep and the last guests had gone home, Clara stood on the porch one more time. The stars were bright overhead. The air smelled like summer and wildflowers and new beginnings. Caleb came up beside her. What are you thinking about? Clara looked out at the land. Her land. Their land. I'm thinking about how different everything is now. 4 months ago, I stepped off a train with 17 cents and 3 hungry children. I had nothing. I was nothing. You were never nothing. I felt like nothing. She turned to face him. And now look at us. A home, a family, a future. You built that, Clara, all of it. We built it. She took his hand. Together. They stood there in the darkness, 2 people who had found each other at the end of everything and discovered it was actually the beginning. I love you, Clara said. I love you too. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll never stop building, no matter what happens, no matter how hard it gets. Promise me we'll keep building together for the rest of our lives. Caleb squeezed her hand. I promise. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. She had crossed 1,000 miles looking for a home. She had found something better. She had found the strength to build one. And standing there under the endless western sky with her children sleeping safely inside and the man she loved beside her, Clara May Hollister, finally understood what Samuel Briggs had been trying to tell her all along. Welcome home. She was home. She was loved. She was whole. And nothing would ever take that away from her again.